Hey, what's going on, guys? Today on the channel we're going to be doing a final video here on my iPad 7th generation. So this is the 10.2 inch iPad. Came out, believe it or not, in 2019. Actually, at the end of November, it will be 4 years that I've had this device. It is pretty crazy to think about, but I haven't really had the need for an iPad over the past year or so like I used to, so I'm actually going to be giving this iPad away to a family member of mine, but it's not gone forever. We'll be able to see it again. But for now, these are kind of my final thoughts and what it's like to use a iPad 7th generation here in 2023. Almost 2024. So why did I get the iPad 7th generation? So previously, before I purchased this one, I had an iPad mini 2, and I had that iPad mini for quite some time, and I really enjoyed it. However, at the time I was getting into my kind of college days, kind of progressing on through that, and I wanted to be able to take a bigger iPad to school instead of having to take my laptop with me. Also, I wanted to be able to utilize an app like GoodNotes 5, that's the one I used, along with the Apple Pencil, to be able to take notes, and the iPad just made that so much easier to do. So that is why I decided to go for a bigger iPad. And like I said, I used this iPad all throughout the rest of my college days. Taking notes was excellent with this. Even doing some of my schoolwork and things worked out pretty good. I do have a video on the channel. It's a few years old now, but it is about using your iPad for school. So I'll link that down below, or probably up in the top right corner. You guys could go check that out if you're interested. So as far as what was the big deal with this new iPad when it came out, so this, of course, at the time was the cheapest iPad you could buy, $329, and I actually got this one on a Black Friday deal. I can't remember exactly how much I got it for, but I'm gonna say it was probably about $250. So this one, for the first time, had a larger screen. So we went from the 9.7 inch iPad that we've known for many years to a 10.2 inch screen. We also had the added smart connector, which allowed you to connect certain different keyboards and things like that. It also bumped us up to the A10 chip, which is what is still supported today with iPadOS 17. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And they finally gave an extra gigabyte of RAM. So this particular iPad had 3 gigabytes of RAM instead of 2. Now overall, the iPad is typical iPad design, right? You have a nice big screen, you have a really thin body that's made of aluminum, you have a lightning port on the bottom, you have your lock button on your top, and of course this one still featured bezels with a traditional home button. So definitely a little bit of a different tone there. This device feels pretty solid in your hand. It's also a pretty lightweight device, although I never really held this device without a case. It was always in this case that I got off of Amazon, and this has been the only one that's ever been on this device. As you can see in some of these clips that you're watching, it's probably about time to replace this case, but we really don't have to now, right? But overall, this is like every other Apple device. It feels pretty well made, and it feels pretty quality. So a big thing here in 2023 to talk about, obviously, with a device that's now 4 years old, is how does it perform with today's software, today's applications, and things like that. So obviously, we were 4 iOS generations behind when this thing came out. The good news, though, like I said, is this has the A10 processor, which still allows us to have the latest and greatest features of iPadOS 17 today. Now, we're not going to get all the features you can do because some of those require more processing power, but it is still nice that we can get the latest version of iPadOS here in 2023 on this device. Also, that extra gigabyte of RAM helps a ton when you are multitasking with all of the features that allow you to do that, like split view, slide over, and multiple windows for applications. I've also noticed that The RAM is kind of not really enough today for all that multitasking, but we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. Another important thing to note here is battery life. So with battery life, I'm happy to tell you that I really haven't noticed a dramatic decrease in battery life. There is some, and if you're really using this device pretty intensively, you're going to notice that your battery is going to go down. But I've never had to charge this device during the day, if that makes sense. It's always gotten me through the day pretty good. And then the last thing we can talk about here is the Apple Pencil first generation. So this pencil obviously is not the second generation, and you can definitely tell that. You notice that this iPad does not have a laminated display, which means you can kind of see the glass and pencil tip separated on the display. It also has a really loud kind of tappy noise when you're actually writing with this pencil. But overall, you can kind of resolve that if you get a paper-like screen protector, a matte finish. You really don't notice all those issues. But the Apple Pencil first generation has also held up pretty well. And I do have a video about using that device here in 2023 as well. But let's go ahead and talk about the last thing here, which would be issues when using this device here in 2023. So even though we are able to run the latest version of iPadOS 17, we still see some limitations. So the main one, like I said, that I was talking about earlier is the RAM. So yes, we do have 3 gigabytes of RAM with this device, which helps a lot. However, you will notice that iPadOS 17 takes a lot more RAM than previous versions of iOS. So you may notice that from time to time that your device might get just a little bit on the laggy side. It's not really all the time an occurrence, but you may notice that things take a little bit longer to load in some instances. The real main thing you notice with the lack of additional RAM is that some of your applications in your multitasking or even your app switcher are going to reload more frequently. So really, I notice this a ton. You might have a couple of instances of a couple of split view applications, or maybe you have several apps in slide over. You're going to notice that when you go back to actually access those apps, they're going to have to reload. That's obviously much different on, let's say, like my iPhone 15 Pro today. You really don't have many applications that have to reload because you have double the RAM that this iPad does. So that's one thing where you're really going to notice. However, the main issue with using the iPad 7th Gen in 2023 only applies if you have the 32 gigabyte model. So I have the 32 gigs of storage in this device. Now back in 2019, that was plenty of storage for me. However, today you're going to notice some issues. I can't remember whether or not I actually have a screenshot saved in my camera roll, but I've noticed that with the past few updates to iPadOS 17, I have not been able to download them. It gives me an error message and says that I don't have enough storage to download these updates. So its solution for that is to offload your applications. But I've noticed that even if I offload my applications, I still do not have enough storage space. Also, iPadOS 17 itself is approaching the 10 gigabyte mark, and then most people have at least another 5 gigs of other storage on their device. Now the other storage kind of clears out over time once it gets kind of full, but if you think about it, you have almost half of your iPad storage that is taken up by iOS and other storage, so that can be a big problem. So I think that is going to be the biggest limitation that you're going to run into when using your iPad today here in 2023. Another thing that I'm kind of forecasting, I could be wrong on this, but this may very well be the last year that we're going to get support for feature updates here since we have the A10 chip, and this is now a 4-year-old device. Next year it'll be 5 years old. It's not Apple Silicon. Obviously they're kind of trying to transition things over. They're phasing older products out quicker than they used to. So I'm kind of worried that maybe this is going to be the last year of support for this iPad. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's probably a good idea though to go ahead and bump up to the 9th gen. Are we on the 9th gen? I have no idea. I think that's what we're on. You can bump up to that one. You can get double the storage space, which will be pretty nice. So yeah, I think that'll be pretty cool. But those are some things to think about. Not enough RAM, not enough storage here in 2023. Definitely the storage issue if you have 32 gigs of RAM. But overall, guys, how has this device been over this long-term period? Well, it's been excellent. I find myself always grabbing my iPad. Well, I used to find myself always grabbing my iPad more than my laptop. It's just more convenient to use an iPad, and it's been a fantastic device over the last 4 years of ownership. I still think you could probably use this thing well into 2024, but like other Apple products nowadays, its days are numbered. Anyways, guys, that's all I got for you in this video today. I appreciate you watching the channel. Let me know if you have an older iPad like this 7th generation and whether or not you still use it today. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching the channel as always, and I will catch you all in the next video.